This presentation examines whether the narratives of so-called gatekeepers and globalist elites are genuinely descriptive or whether they are designed as rhetorical tools to manipulate public perception. We explore what political science research reveals about how these narratives emerge, how they operate, and why they pose risks to democratic stability. Our goal is to bring clarity and evidence to a topic often clouded by emotional language and oversimplified claims. It is true that the narratives of gatekeepers and globalist elites are widely recognized in political science research as populist rhetorical devices crafted to oversimplify complex issues. These narratives inflame emotions, create convenient villains, and direct public anger toward vague or undefined enemies rather than toward the real structural causes of challenges like housing, inflation, and global economic trends. Because these narratives replace nuance with emotionally satisfying but inaccurate explanations, researchers identify them as potentially deceptive forms of communication. The terms gatekeepers and globalist elites fall into a well-documented category of anti-elite populist rhetoric. This rhetoric frames society as a battle between a morally pure people and a corrupt elite, regardless of whether such an elite exists in the way described. Scholars emphasize that this style of communication is not unique to one leader or one country. Rather, it is a pattern seen across global populist movements, each adopting similar emotional frames to mobilize support and create a sense of conflict. Researchers find these narratives deceptive because they rely heavily on deliberate vagueness. The elite or gatekeeper is almost never defined with factual precision. This ambiguity is strategic, enabling audiences to project their frustrations onto an enemy that cannot answer back. By simplifying complex issues like inflation, immigration, supply chains, and global finance into a single story of powerful villains blocking prosperity, these narratives mislead voters about what is actually driving societal challenges and what solutions are available. Populist research shows that these narratives exploit normal human cognitive biases. They activate in-group and out-group thinking, creating strong emotional responses such as threat, betrayal, and fear. They also provide simple explanations during periods of uncertainty, which the brain finds comforting even when those explanations are inaccurate. Scholars warn that because these techniques rely on emotion rather than evidence, they function as manipulative forms of political communication, shaping perception more through feeling than through fact. Peer-reviewed studies consistently show that anti-elite and anti-globalist narratives are hallmark tools of ideational populism. These narratives are used deliberately to construct an emotional conflict and mobilize outrage. Research demonstrates that they do not require factual grounding to be effective. The elite may be public servants, judges, universities, financial institutions, international organizations, or simply imagined networks, whatever best fuels suspicion. As a result, these narratives distort reality, encourage conspiracy-style thinking, and reduce trust in democratic institutions. Democracies rely on trust, independent institutions, and informed consent of the governed. Anti-elite narratives attack these foundations by suggesting that institutions are secretly corrupt or hostile to the public. When enough people accept this idea, they may dismiss credible information, reject nonpartisan institutions, and place trust only in leaders who claim to speak for the real people. Scholars interpret such shifts as major democratic stress signals, where the public is pulled away from evidence-based reasoning and toward emotionally charged myths. In conclusion, political research is clear that the gatekeepers and globalist elites narratives function as tools of emotional persuasion rather than accurate descriptions of political reality. They oversimplify complex issues, direct public frustration toward exaggerated or imaginary enemies, and weaken democratic understanding. Because they do not require factual grounding to succeed, scholars consistently describe them as potentially deceptive communication tools that undermine informed citizenship. The sources in this presentation come from leading scholars in political science and communication studies. Jagers and Walgrave contributed research on how populism operates as a communication style, highlighting the central role of anti-elite framing. Stanley provided the ideological framework identifying populism as a thin ideology that attaches itself easily to emotional narratives. Wayland contributed comparative research showing how populist framing reshapes democratic expectations across countries. Hawkins, Carlin, Litvey, and Rovira Kaltwasser contributed the ideational approach to populism, explaining how emotional storytelling substitutes for evidence in political communication. Wodak's work contributed insights into the politics of fear, showing how right-wing populist discourse manipulates public emotion through crisis language and exaggerated threats. Together, These sources provide a rigorous academic foundation for evaluating gatekeeper and globalist elite rhetoric. For more fact-based content about Canadian politics, democratic health, economic trends, and rhetorical analysis, the Facts for Canadians platforms offer ongoing resources and educational material. These outlets aim to strengthen public understanding, improve media literacy, and support evidence-based democratic engagement.